Well, there's a lot of spirit here, you know. And we even have the polls up, but I think it's much more than the polls. No, the polls, I'm telling you, you can make those suckers sing. You get the right pollster, you can do, and you really do inflict damage, you know, when you do like this person from Iowa. Today, the election essentially is really, we're talking Turkey, comes out with a poll different from every other poll, because it wasn't even in question. It's really the opposite way. I'm way up. If you look at 3-4 months ago, Dan, I was losing states that now are walks, you know, they're now walks, and I think you're gonna have that here. It's called suppression. They suppress, and it actually should be illegal, because it's, in many ways, it's worse than the written word, which these guys do quite well, actually. But it's now or never. This is it. This is the moment. We've been waiting 9 years for this, and we got 2 days, and we got all this crap going on with the press and with the fake stuff and fake polls. And by the way, the polls are just as corrupt as some of the writers back there. They can make those polls sing. They can make them sing. They brag about it. I got a poll, I'm 10 points up in Iowa. One of my enemies just puts out a poll, I'm 3 down. Joni Ernst called me, everyone's called me, they said, you're killing in Iowa. The farmers love me and I love them. But they came up, they just announced a fake poll. Hey, think of it, right before the election that I'm 3 points down. I'm not down in Iowa. I got $28 billion for the farmers. $28 billion. Nobody else would have gotten 10 cents. Joe would sleep. Do you think he thinks about the farmers? And you know who gave me the $28 billion for the farmers? China, because China screwed our farmers. And then they tell me I'm down in Iowa. I don't think so. And you know what? A good poll, Emerson, no friend of mine, they said that poll is wrong. Everybody said, why do they announce a poll that's highly skewed toward Democrats and liberals? Why do they do that? When you read it, they interviewed far more Democrats than they did Republicans. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? And I guess there's a law that they have to say that, because they would have preferred not having to say that.
That was Donald Trump melting down in the aftermath of the release of the highly touted Selzer poll out of Iowa, which showed Kamala Harris up by 3 points, 47-44. And while Trump writes this poll off because it's not good for him, because that's how it works, any polls where he's winning are sacrosanct and polls where he's losing should be illegal, let's talk for a moment about how accurate the Selzer poll out of Iowa is. And this is courtesy of Matthew Klein from Cook Political Report. In Iowa in 2022, she had Republicans winning the Senate by 12. They won by 12. In 2020, she had the Republicans winning the presidency by 7. The Republicans won by 8. In 2020, she had the Republicans winning the Senate by 4. The Republicans won by 7. In 2018, she had the Democrats winning the gubernatorial race by 2. The Republican won by 3. In 2014, she had the Republicans winning the Senate by 7. The Republicans won by 8. In 2012, she had the Democrats winning the presidency by 5. They won by 6. In other words, over the last decade, she's averaged just 1.8% off from the actual results. And if you take out her miss in 2018, she averaged just over 1% off. There is quite literally not another pollster in the United States who is this accurate. And of course, look, it's certainly possible that she could be wrong. We won't know until Election Day. But if the most accurate pollster in America is saying that Kamala is up by 3, the fact remains that I wouldn't want to bet against her, and neither would most people. You'd have to go back to 2004, 20 years ago, to find the last time she missed on a presidential poll, which is probably why Donald Trump is so salty about all of this, claiming that this poll isn't okay because it's an outlier. So let's talk about that, because he is right in the sense that most other polls are pretty even, and this one is an outlier. We actually have an answer for that thanks to Nate Cohn at the New York Times. Perhaps the very best reason to think the polls might underestimate Kamala Harris this cycle is simply that many pollsters are so concerned, understandably, about underestimating Mr. Trump. It's hard to overstate how traumatic the 2016 and 2020 elections were for many pollsters. For some, another underestimation of Mr. Trump could be a major threat to their business and their livelihood. For the rest, their status and reputations are on the line. If they underestimate Mr. Trump a third straight time, how can their polls be trusted again? It is much safer, whether in terms of literal self-interest or purely psychologically, to find a close race than to gamble on a clear Harris victory. At the same time, the 2016 and 2020 polling misfires shattered many pollsters' confidence in their own methods and data. When their results came in very blue, they didn't believe it. And frankly, I share that same feeling. If our final Pennsylvania poll comes in at Harris +7, why would I believe it? As a result, pollsters are more willing to take steps to produce more Republican-leaning results. In other words, pollsters are literally just afraid to make Trump and Republicans mad. That's it. They fall victim to the exact same scam that the rest of the media falls victim to, which is that if they don't heap enough positive coverage onto Republicans, those fragile Republicans, then they will whine and cry and scream and stomp their feet and try to discredit them. And so to compensate for that, pollsters will literally pad Republican poll results to try and keep them in their good graces. I'm sorry, but if we treated Republicans with kid gloves any more in this country, we would mistake them for 9-year-olds. And the irony of this, Trump literally whines about suppression polls.
They suppress, and it actually should be illegal because it's, in many ways, it's worse than the written word, which these guys do quite well, actually.
It's called suppression and it should be illegal. So Trump is complaining because any polls that are bad for him are what he considers suppression polls because they suppress turnout among Republicans who get discouraged by the polling results. And yet, all the while, the pollsters are actually overweighting results in Republicans' favor. So if Trump is concerned about suppression polls, then I think the call is coming from inside the House. Although he'll never admit it because Republicans only have one setting, and that is being a victim. Even when they are gaining undue benefit, still, somehow, they're the victims. Granted, while Trump is throwing his little temper tantrum because the Iowa poll dared acknowledge objective reality that wouldn't be good for him, the fact is that we actually have a pretty good idea of how we got here. Here's Ann Selzer herself during an interview with my friend at the Bulwark, Tim Miller.
What it seems like, given that just this morning we released the findings from the congressional races, and we are now showing 2 Iowa districts tilting toward the Democratic candidate, and that includes a big lead in the 1st district, which is 53-37. And that district in particular has the driving issue, from what I read, has been the abortion issue. And it was over the summer that Iowa's 6-week ban on abortion went into effect after all the court challenges were taken care of. So that the decision being made, the law going into force, and then people living with it for a while, and it being a strong, sort of compelling thing from Iowa's in the congressional districts. Iowa right now, all 4 congressional districts are held by Republicans. So to me, it seems like to a certain extent there's something organic going on because the presidential candidates certainly aren't spending any money or time here. And it may be, in fact, that these congressional races are driving the presidential race toward the Democrat.
Look, Iowa is a state that voted for Obama not too long ago by nearly 10 points, and it now has one of the strictest abortion bans in the entire country, banning abortion in almost all cases after 6 weeks. And I'm not sure if you all realize how unpopular these laws are, but they have contributed to Republican losses even in states like Ohio and Kansas and Kentucky and Alabama. One might think that their insistence on imposing these unpopular theocratic edicts onto the population may just yield to their desire to, win elections, but apparently not. Apparently, the draw of just systematically dismantling our rights is much too appealing for these Republicans. And so if the politicians aren't going to be responsible, then clearly the voters are willing to step in. And those voters, by the way, are overwhelmingly women, who clearly have something to say in this election. Here again is Ann Selzer.
The gender gap is particularly noteworthy. And you look at independent women, older women in particular. Talk about what you found on that, and which obviously could also speak to the abortion question.
Right. Well, the pollsters who work with contests that are going to be decided by a gender gap typically say you need to win with women more than you lose with men. And we're seeing that in these data right now. So men are 52-38 for Trump, but the margin is wider, 56-36, a 20-point gap with women for Harris. The gap for women age 65 and over, and this, the age 65 and over group, I've been watching this whole cycle because they, in past cycles, have tilted more Republican, but now they are strongly tilted toward Harris, and the margin among women 65 and over is more than 2 to 1. It's 63-28.
Wow.
Again, that's sort of a jaw-dropping number.
Now, I know I just spent the last 5 minutes explaining why this poll is bad news for Trump and good news for Kamala, and don't get me wrong, it is. When Ann Selzer says that you are behind in Iowa, I wouldn't bet against her. But the reality is that no poll is perfect, even ones done by excellent pollsters. And we don't win elections with favorable polls, we win them with more votes. So, first and foremost, do not let this make you complacent. Let it inspire you. Let it tell you that you don't have to submit to despair or anxiety, but rather that there is a path to victory within reach. And that if we want it, we have to fight for it. We have to put in the work. We have to show up. So take out your phone right now and find 1 or 2 people that you would feel comfortable calling or texting and make those people your responsibility for Election Day. Do they have a plan to vote? Did they receive a mail ballot? Was it submitted? Will they go to the polls? Do they know the issues? Do they know the dangers posed by Trump? The most persuasive in this election cycle aren't the politicians or the commercials or the ads or the memes or the influencers or the YouTubers. They are the folks like you who have real life relationships with other people. So use those connections because they can make the difference here. Don't look back a week from today if the worst case scenario were to happen and wish that you could have done more. Do more now. Donate to your favorite candidate. Go to their website and find volunteer opportunities. Canvass and door knock in your neighborhood or a nearby neighborhood. Phone bank with Democratic organizations or campaigns. These opportunities are available. Spend a little bit of time putting in the work because it matters. We've got a couple of days to go, so remember what we are fighting for. The right for women to have autonomy over their own bodies, the right for the LGBT community to have their own rights, the right for Americans to travel freely between states, the right for workers to get a living wage and live with dignity, the right to breathe clean air and drink clean water and live on a habitable planet, the right to send our kids to school safely, the right to live in a democracy free from the whims of a petty tyrant that views our government as his personal piggy bank and get out of jail free card. We have a rare opportunity right now to take back our power, and these opportunities don't come around often. So leave it all out in the field, and let's make sure that good polls become good results. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.